jokes on you. I had to swim, bitches.
Alright, so here we are for last episode, number 12 in the series of 12. We're up to the 7th chapter, working with others, which is our 12th step. And I don't know if that light's not being in the way there, so that look good. There. Page 89, huh? Okay. All right, we'll get right into it. So practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. So it doesn't say once in a while if you can be helpful, or if you can fit it into your schedule, or if you're not too busy, or if you says intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. And that's hard. That's kind of a hard thing to do sometimes, isn't it? With alcoholics and addicts. I mean, we are not people that make good choices, and we're not easy to deal with. We're very manipulative. We're very offensive. We're very.
I think it's harder to do with normies, to be honest.
You think it's harder with normal people?
I do.
Yeah.
I think that's just for being on the other side of the fence.
So it says life will take, these are some promises, life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. It doesn't say, so it uses some pretty determinate words there. And this idea of watching the fellowship grow up about you, how I've seen that happen in my own life is coming in and going through the steps and working the program, and then all of a sudden somebody asks you to sponsor them, and so then all of a sudden you're taking a guy through the steps, and then another one comes in and you take another guy, and so all of a sudden you start having these other relationships build around you, and the people that you've worked with, you start watching them come up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and then you start watching them foster others and sponsor other men, So I think for me that's what that means. You'll see a fellowship grow up about you. So it says frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. So frequent contact, what do you think that means? Once a week? Daily? Probably. For me, perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. Well, you can tell today we don't need to do that, do we? We've got a constant influx of new people by most of them get invitations from the judge, right? Isn't that how probably 90% of the people get to AA today is invitation from the judge? Says they will only be too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or a reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish, but it happens that because of your drinking experience, you have a unique, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they are dealing with a sick person. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious learnings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned. Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it's better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Then let his family or a friend ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship who, as a part of their own recovery, try to help others, and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you. If he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place this book where he can see it in the interval. Here, no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over-anxious, for that might spoil matters. Usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution. When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed. See your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the trouble liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest so you have to understand what that mental twist is first before you can share it with somebody else, right? Later in the book, doesn't it say you can't transmit something you haven't got, right? So you have to have an understanding of alcoholism and all of these other pieces of alcoholism before you can go transmit this to somebody else. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. See, it's telling you how to do it. If he is alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Isn't that interesting? So it doesn't say go to a man and say, hey, come on in here. The water's fine. Come on in. Everybody recovers and you can do just fine. That's not what it says. It says dwell on the hopeless feature of alcoholism. Because if you don't see how hopeless this condition is, there's no way that you're going to go through the process. Understand? Remember, it went to great lengths to do that in the beginning of the book when we read chapters. There is a solution and more about alcoholism. It talked a lot about the hopelessness, right, of alcoholism. Dr. Silkworth talked about that too. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding the first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. That's a really powerful statement, isn't it? It says, show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding the first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. Don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. And be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusion. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can, if he is not too alcoholic, but insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance that he can recover by himself. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of the body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Explain that many are doomed who never realized their predicament. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose. But you may tell him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is alcoholic, so much the better, even though your protege may not have entirely admitted his condition. He has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question if he will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. So I think that's an interesting thing. Think about this. It says if he's atheist or agnostic, but in my understanding, agnostic means that you don't necessarily believe in a personal God, that there might be something out there that is underneath all of this, okay? But atheist my understanding is the belief that there is no God, there is nothing beyond this. This is it, right? So how could you, if the man be, okay, it says he can choose any conception he likes. So I personally, if somebody's not willing to believe in a power greater than themselves, I don't know how to take you through the steps. I don't know how you do that. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people that do it, but I couldn't do that. And I've declined to take men through the steps that were not willing to come to some belief in a higher power. Whatever it is, if they want to choose GOD, good orderly direction, if they want to choose group of drunks, they want to make AA as a whole their higher power, I don't have a problem with that. But as far as being agnostic or atheist, I don't know that I could take you through the steps. And the book kind of confirms that, right here, where it says he can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him, right? So it doesn't say you can do this without a conception. I don't know that to be true. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself and that he live by spiritual principles. When dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. There is no use arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which he may already be confused. Don't raise such issues, no matter what your own convictions are. You know, for me personally, Jesus is Lord of my life. That's what I choose. But I don't ever ask anybody else to believe that. I don't ever bring that to the tables of Alcoholics Anonymous. Rarely will you ever hear me state that. It's mine, it's personal, it's for me. It's not something that I need for you to believe. So I think that many of us, and I would have been very prejudiced if somebody had came at me like that in the beginning and said that that's, was part of this thing, which it really isn't. It's God as we understand him, right? The most personal term of a higher power that I think that you will hear in Alcoholics Anonymous is in the steps. Humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. that's personal, isn't it? Him, that's personal.
I mean, shit, even the third step.
I can't hear you.
Even the third step, turn around, will our lives don't care what God is.
As we understood him. But I'm saying that that's God as we understand him, and that's very nondescript. That's very that's almost impersonal. But when you say him,
Okay, I see what you're
that's very personal,
saying. I
right?
see what you're saying.
Okay. Your prospect may belong to religious denomination. His religious education and training may be superior to yours. In that case, he's going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and useful, constructive action. That's a powerful statement, isn't it? I'll read it again.
Selfish, not
I'm
useful.
sorry. Thank you. Unselfish. Thank you. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish, constructive action. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do, but call to his attention that the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it or he would not drink. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts he knows so well. We represent no particular faith or denomination. We are dealing only with general principles common to most denominations. When I got sober this time, I went to detox up at Fort Hamilton Hospital, and in detox, I wanted to check out the option of treatment. So they had a guy come from the Hall Treatment Center, local treatment center, men's residential, and interview me. And so in interviewing me, he told me what his program was like and how it was kind of 12-step based and so forth. And I said, well, I don't think it's got enough God in it for me, you know, because I was on this religious kick, right? So a couple weeks later, when I was out of detox and hit my second bottom, not drinking, but my emotional bottom, where I wanted to commit suicide, I called him and I asked for help. And he said, oh yeah, he says, you that religious guy, right? And I said, yeah. He says, so but he asked me when I was in treatment, he says, so how's that God doing for you so far? And oh man, he pissed me off. I was like, how dare you blaspheme God like that, you know? Yeah, he was right though. Alcoholics Anonymous had the missing piece for me. All right, so outline the program of action, explaining how you made a self-appraisal, how you straightened out your past, and why you are now endeavoring to be helpful to him. It is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you are helping him. Make it plain that he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. Don't you hate that though? You see a guy comes in and he gets on the path and he gets a sponsor and works steps, and you see him, you know, doing good, and then reconnects with the family and gets a good job and things are going good, and then you see him instead of 5 meetings a week, you see him at 3, and then you see him at 2, and then 1, and then all of a sudden you see him at the grocery store and say, hey, how's it going, John? He says, yeah, I'm doing great, man. I said, I ain't seen you lately. Yeah, I've been going to church. I'm like, thanks, man. Thanks for paying it forward. And you know, maybe that's his path, and I guess I shouldn't be so critical of that, but I do feel critical about that, you know. So suggest how important it is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. Make it clear that he is not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you have helped him. If your talk has been sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions. Your candidate may give reasons why he need not follow all of the program. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning which requires discussion with other people. Do not contradict such views. Tell him that you once felt as he does, but you doubt whether you would have made much progress had you not taken action. On your first visit, tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him your copy of this book. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. If you do stay, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. Sometimes a new man is anxious to proceed at once, and you may be tempted to let him do so. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later, he is likely to say that you rushed him. You will be most, and I don't know what they mean by that. I'm a little unclear about that, but we'll go on. It says you will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusade or reform. Never talk down to an alcoholic from any moral or spiritual hilltop. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection. Show him how they worked for you, offering him friendship and fellowship. Tell him that if he wants to get well, you will do anything to help. If he is not interested in your situation, if he expects you to act only as a banker for his financial difficulties or a nurse for his sprees, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind. This he may do after he gets hurt some more. If he is sincerely interested and wants to see you again, ask him to read this book in the interval. After doing that, he must decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He should not be pushed or prodded by you, his wife, or his friends. If he is to find God, the desire must come from within. If he thinks he can do the job in some other way or profess some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his own conscience. We have no monopoly on God. We merely have an approach that worked with us. But point out that we alcoholics have much in common and that you would like, in any case, to be friendly. Let it go at that. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. To spend too much time on any one situation is to deny some other people an opportunity to live and be happy. One of our fellowship failed entirely with his first half dozen prospects. He often says that if he had continued to work on them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered of their chance. Suppose now you are making your second visit to a man. He has read this volume and says he's prepared to go through the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you are available if he wishes to make a decision. That'd be the third step, right? And tell his story. That'd be the fifth step, right? But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. He may be broke and homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or give him a little financial assistance. But you should not deprive yourself or your family or creditors of money they should have. Perhaps you will want to take the man into your home for a few days. But be sure you use discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family and that he is not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Permit that and you only harm him. You will be making it possible for him to be insincere. You may be aiding in his destruction rather than his recovery. Never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. I'll read that again. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to act the Good Samaritan every day if need be. This may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money in your home. counseling fanatic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums, and we would say treatment centers and detoxes today, wouldn't we? Your telephone may jangle at any time of the day or night. Your wife may sometimes say she is neglected. A drunk may smash the furniture in your home or burn a mattress. You may have to fight with him if he is violent. Sometimes you will have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. Occasionally you will have to meet such conditions. We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for a long at a time. It is not good for him, and it sometimes creates serious complications to a family. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there's no reason why you should neglect his family. And I'll remind you that these words were written before there was an Al-Anon as well. You should continue to be friendly to them. The family should be offered your way of life. I would, in this case, I would offer them the connection to Al-Anon. That's what I would do. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there is much better chance that the family will recover. This is true, because it is a family illness. And even though he continued to drink, the family will be more bearable. Family life more bearable. Family will find life more bearable. For the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. So if you're working with somebody that is just real needy and needs help with this and that, and I need this and I need that, they're probably not in the right space spiritually. The men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong path. Yet, we do go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things when such action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think not. It is not the matter of giving that's in question, but the matter of how, when, and how to give. That often makes the difference between failure and success, and this is true. You know, for the guy that's not ready yet, there's nothing I can say that's going to convince him of his need for recovery. And of the guy that's really ready to recover, you can't say anything wrong. You're not going to dissuade him from that. That's all. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely on our assistance rather than upon God. He clamors for this or that. I'll tell you a little story too with this. I had a guy I was sponsoring up at the hall years ago, and I was coming up on his discharge date, and he was plugged in, he was working steps, he was doing all the right things. He had got a job, but he didn't know where he was going. He didn't have enough money to go get an apartment. He didn't know what he was going to do when he left treatment, and his discharge date was coming up. And he called me like the night before, and he says, well, tomorrow's my day. He says, I still don't know what I'm doing. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to fix it for him. I wanted to say, well, just come on over to my house, right? You know, and here, I'll put you up in the basement or whatever. And I just knew that it wasn't the right thing to do, you know. And I don't know how I knew that. I don't know what it is that persuaded me to make that decision, but that's the decision I made. So he calls me the next day about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's happy. He says, guess what happened? And I said, what? He says, I got a place to stay. He says, I was at work today, and I told my boss about what was happening, and that I didn't have a place to go. And he said, in this house that we're working on, they were rehabbing a house. He says, this house that we're working on, he told me I could just stay there until I get enough money to get a place. So if I had done what I thought about doing, I would have interrupted God's plan. See? So that's the idea behind discernment about what's helpful and what's enabling. And there's a real fine line. And I don't know exactly how you find it, but I know that it's there. And I think that if you pray and you ask for it, I think that you'll be led there. So he clamors. He clamors for this or that. claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Many of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trusts God and clean house. Now the domestic problem. There may be divorce, separation, or just strained relations. When your prospect has made such reparations as he can to his family and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living, he should proceed to put those principles into action at home. That is, if he is lucky enough to have a home. Though his family be at fault, in many respects he should not be concerned about that. He should concentrate on his own spiritual demonstration. Argument and fault-finding are to be avoided like the plague. In many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are to be expected. If persisted in for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. The most incompatible people discover they have a basis upon which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. These can then be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness. After they have seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time, provided, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful regardless of what anyone else says or does. Of course, we all fall much below this standard many times, but we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree. If there be a divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure of his recovery. The wife should be fully understand of his new way of life. If their old relationship is to resume, it must be on a better basis, since the former did not work. This means the new attitude and spirit all around. Sometimes it is to the best interest of all concerned that a couple remain apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. Let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. When the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties. Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon other people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. We have seen men get well whose family have never returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family came back too soon. I think that that's a good example of the idea that too much too fast is just too much too fast. Slow and steady, that's what gets it done. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. Here's some more promises. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do, but urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right path without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. Perhaps, people have said we must not go where liquor is served, we must not have it in our homes, we must shun friends who drink, we must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes, we must not go to bars, our friends must hide their bottles. If we go to their houses, we mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with this spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like the Greenland ice cap, and even there an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to the distant places on the theory that he would escape the alcohol problem. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. This includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, and plain old ordinary whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. So I'm going to stop there and share a couple of things. Number one, if you look at where this statement appears in the book, it's into the 12th step, right? So the idea that I could walk into my first meeting and then continue to associate with old friends, playmates, playpens is probably not a good idea. But after a period of time, when I started to actively make amends between that time and the time that I probably started working with others, something happened in that I was restored to sanity. My thinking, my thought toward alcohol and towards drugs changed. I have a sane attitude towards it today, and I've been restored to sanity. Today, I can go anywhere and do anything, and I know that. As long as I'm on good, fit, spiritual ground, as long as I'm solid in how I feel about me, you, God, and life. I'm not angry, upset, feeling uncomfortable, afraid, fearful, anxious, any of that stuff going on. I can go anywhere and do anything. But in the beginning, I definitely separated myself from places where people were drinking, and I still would never walk into a place where somebody was actively using. If it were a 12-step call, I would probably contact them and ask them to come outside and have my discussions with me and the person that I brought with me, because I never make a 12-step call by myself. 2 reasons. 1, it's not safe. Number 2, who am I to think that I can carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous by myself? That's arrogant, and it's not a good idea. So if I were to go on a 12-step call to a place where somebody were using, I would ask them to come outside of that environment and speak with them in that manner. Not that I would be, not that I'm afraid for my own sobriety or my own recovery to walk into that, but it's just a better idea, and that's what dictates my life today, is common sense and good ideas. All right. So, you will note that we made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place, or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such a place, such places? If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. But be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start, and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead. You know, another way of saying spiritually fit or recognizing when you're not spiritually fit is Dr. Silkworth referred to it as being restless, irritable, and discontented. If that stuff is what's going on inside of you, you should probably stay away for the time being. Why sit with long faces in places where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. If a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. If you are with a person who wants to eat at a bar, by all means go along. Let your friends know they are not to change their habits on your account. At a proper time and proper place, explain to all of your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. Now you are getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor. Your job now is to be in a place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others, so never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed. Many of us keep liquor in our homes. We often need it to carry green recruits through the severe hangover. Probably doesn't happen so much anymore, but in the beginning it did. Some of us still serve it to our friends, provided they are non-alcoholic, but some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question. We feel that each family, in the light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful to anyone. Every new alcoholic looks for this spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds we are not witch burners. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have been saved had it not been for such stupidity. We would not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. Someday, we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem, but we shall be of little use if our attitude is of bitterness or hostility. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to. Here's the chapter working with others. 12th step. Comments? Thoughts? Go ahead.
There's a couple things right here. I don't know. I think this is why Alcoholics Anonymous works so well and why it's so attractive. One, the higher power of our own conception. Two, it talks about here how some people keep liquor in their homes, some don't, but it says we never argue this question. And right here at the end, what it talks about in the 10-step promises, we've stopped fighting anybody or anything. We don't take a position on anything.
Right.
And I think that's why it works so well. Like, we just want to help you recover.
Right.
It's not a lot of groups or organizations do that in the world.
Which is really a statement about tradition, isn't it?
Yeah. It's autonomy.
Yeah. About each group being autonomous, but that Alcoholics has no opinion on outside issues, you know. In the beginning, there were a lot of people that wanted to take positions, you know, on the legal aspects of alcohol and different things, and that would have destroyed us. I think the Washingtonians was a group that took a stab at alcoholism even before the Oxford group and AA, and they became, my understanding is, I'm not a historian when it comes to this, but my understanding is that they took political positions on things, and that's what destroyed them. That's what kind of disintegrated them. So. Anything else? All right, well, I hope you all have enjoyed this and gotten something out of it. This was the end of our endeavor through the book. We're going to stop with the 12th step. There will be one more episode that I'll do later to re-record the one that I lost, which was about Bill and Evie in New York. And you can look that up later. So I thank you for your time, and we'll say good night.
Question.